Okay, let's get this over with. I'm going to assume that you've watched Mortal Kombat and are at least somewhat familiar with the IP at this point. I would give a spoiler warning, but claiming that there's anything to spoil about this flick would be way too charitable. The average moviegoer has seen this template 100 times before, and diehard MK fans are only interested in a cinematic experience in which characters they know and love brutally maim and murder each other. You know, so that they can get a break from the games in which characters they know and love brutally maim and murder each other. Earthrealm is on the verge of catastrophe. Should it lose one more tournament, the savage realm of Outworld will invade. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. The tournament does not take place in this movie, and Outworld is invading anyway. How else would you categorize Shang Tsung sending his minions to preemptively defeat Earthrealm's champions so that they don't stand a chance during the tournament?
It is forbidden to claim victory until the tournament begins.
The conflict outside of Mortal Kombat is not forbidden.
Whether you defeat the other realm's champions before or during the tournament doesn't make a difference at the end of the day. This is why professional sporting events have rules, such as no kneecapping the other sprinters before the 100-meter dash. Why have a tournament at all if the gods aren't going to make sure that combatants follow the rules?
Besides, the other gods are too lazy to stop me. I have come.
But an ancient prophecy foretells that a new group of champions will be united by the rise of Hanzo Hasashi's blood. This is why prophecies suck, almost universally. They can be done well, but all too often a prophecy is a ham-fisted excuse for writers to manifest whatever illogical plot beats they feel obligated to incorporate or were forced upon them from above. Cole Young might not be from the lore or particularly useful in the movie, but we need a POV character, and some prophecy that we never see carved in stone or written on old parchment says he's important. There is no precedent for this prophecy besides this wall of text that is quite literally the people behind the scenes telling you how important he is. And what a shame for that. He's a washed-up MMA fighter with only his sister-cousin daughter for support in the octagon while his girlfriend-wife partner refuses to watch. Probably because she's tired of seeing him take beatings like this one. Yes, he is the one who's going to unite Earthrealm's champions. And if you ever doubt that based on extremely obvious signs that this man is not fit for duty, just remember, prophecy. Why is Cole even a fighter? What compels him to compete in spite of all the negative feedback he gets? Is it really as simple as him being a distant descendant of Hanzo Hasashi? A man with incredible combat prowess who was robbed of everything by a superpowered rival clan leader? If at any point that seems like a silly explanation, owed to it being extremely convenient that Cole is a grown man with years of fighting experience at the time of Outworld's preemptive strike and it being absurd for a fighting skill to be passed down genetically over generations, just remember, Dragon Birthmark. Or, as we soon come to learn, Dragon Mark. Cole is special, you see. While every other champion earned their mark by killing the previous owner, Cole was born with his. Whatever is in his blood to make that possible must be the same thing that got Scorpion transported to the Netherrealm after death while everyone else decomposes where they lay. But how does any of that add up, prophecy? Jax, not Jax Briggs or Jackson Briggs, just Jax, confronts Cole after his loss to compliment him on his Nito Mosquito Dragon Tat. Emily, who we're supposed to guess is Cole's daughter, tells him to show Jax the mark that he just complimented, as though he suddenly forgot it was there. And after learning that it's a birthmark, Jax does nothing. He and his partner Sonya Blade are running an investigation that transcends time and space, and one of their only tangible leads is the dragon mark that hops from person to person upon killing them. Jax has good reason to stop Cole in his tracks and lay it all out for him, but instead he waits till Cole's entire family is in danger later that night to be useful. Reintroducing Bihan. Or rather,
I am Sub-Zero.
This brief cutaway to the savage realm of Outworld heavily implies that Bihan is working for this man, Shang Tsung, professional mustache twirler and soul sucker extraordinaire. Bihan says that because he killed Hanzo Hasashi centuries ago, the prophecy is moot. So despite possessing ice powers for hundreds of years and having a working relationship with Shang Tsung, he's only now telling him that he'd prefer to go by Sub-Zero. How long was he just sitting on that? Anyway, Cole and his wife Deborah left Emily alone outside, which is terrible parenting already, at the perfect time for Bihan to show up and start making a mess. Because even though we never physically see this prophecy, Shang Tsung is still worried that it's valid and inexplicably knows exactly where to send Bihan to find Cole. Thankfully, Jax was stalking them and shows up in the nick of time for a rescue.
What the fuck is that thing?
Funny, that didn't sound much like thanks for saving my ass.
No, Jax, you don't deserve a thank you. This entire situation could have been avoided if you got up off your Steve Harvey-looking ass back at the gym. So Bihan jetpacks ahead of them to the end of an alley that Jax could very easily reverse out of. And for the sake of argument, why didn't he? He could have spared himself a lot of trouble, if you know what I mean. And what I mean is, I have no empathy for him losing his arms because he brought it on himself. Sadly, this is only the start of significant plot points being built on characters' idiocy, and we're barely 20 minutes in. Before sacrificing himself to the plot gods, Jax told Cole where he could find help, in the form of Sonya Blade. So he leaves his family in a not-so-safe house, which they have access to, somehow. and uses his mark to win Sonya's trust instantaneously. Lady, how do you know that he isn't a spy, shapeshifter, or Outworld champion in disguise who intends to undermine your operation? He showed up without Jax, claiming that he was sent by Jax, and you just believed him. He could have killed Jax himself after learning everything he knew, thereby taking his mark, showed up here alleging to be an ally, and you wouldn't know any different.
You guys are military.
Special forces.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Sonya breaks it down for Cole, basically reiterating what we already know with a lot of waffle added to the mix. A bad-tempered Australian pipes up from the background and we're introduced to Kano, a character who Sonya explicitly describes as scum of the earth and yet another example of someone identifying by a mononym for no reason. I know Jax is short for Jackson Briggs in the games, but that's never made clear in the movie and Kano's name has no such justification that I'm aware of. All around we've got a cast of kookily named characters. With the exposition and introductions complete, the gang is attacked by an invisible acid-spitting lizard monster.
Sorgons. Big gnarly lizards.
Kano uses said acid spit to get free, and our three heroes work together to defeat the creature, with the finishing blow coming from Kano himself, after which he is allowed to freely roam the premises, as though he wasn't a scumbag criminal captive mere minutes ago. And Sonya, struggling to muster the energy to act, is only rhetorically uncomfortable with him drinking her beer and doodling his recent victory. Also, he's just leaving his open wound to fester. I know that this is Mortal Kombat, and he's walking fine after taking a knife to the leg as well, but we have officially reached that point. We've reached this point fairly early in many of the films I've covered in the past, and this one is no exception. This is the point in the story where the writers gave up caring. By now, Sonya has all but forgotten about her partner who she knows is dealing with forces beyond their comprehension. Cole abandoned his family in a shack where they could easily be found and killed, captured, or tortured for information, and neither of them are the least bit shaken by the insane encounter that just took place. This plot does not care about structural integrity and is doing the bare minimum to keep moving forward.
I fancy myself a bit of an artist.
He's a psychopath.
Excuse me for asking, but how does illustrating the W you just earned make you a psychopath? That man just punched the heart out of a Zorgon. He's earned intergalactic bragging rights. Kano reveals that he knows the location of Raiden's temple, which Sonya decides on the spot is their next destination, and in order for Kano to disclose said location, Sonya offers him $3 million. But why? Earlier, she had him in captivity. When they tussle minutes from now, he's literally no match for her, and throughout the movie he's shown to be the worst fighter, probably worse than Cole by several orders of magnitude. Why does Sonya feel the need to offer him anything? She could make him her bitch, and what, you think Cole's gonna object? This is not her upstanding personality shining through the veneer of toughness, she's just a dimwit.
You're gonna give that guy $3 million?
I live in this shithole. You think I got $3 million?
Kano spots the gang of flight to the desert, and only after they parachute down does he tell them that Raiden's temple is possibly 30 kilometers away. They walk from dawn till dusk. A 30k hike, in that climate, with no food, water, or direction is bad enough logistically, but taking a break to have a fight in between and then keep going, that's pushing boundaries even for Mortal Kombat. I've done a 30k hike. Your hair doesn't look like that afterwards. And what do you know? As if things weren't easy enough already, Liu Kang walks straight at them. In this vast desert, our gang just happened to be on a collision course with the one character also roaming the hot sands who could guide them to where they need to be. Mr. Kang gives the gang one final exposition dump, bringing everyone up to speed on what's at stake and their roles in this interdimensional conflict. But we're not done with the rail-guided tour of the temple yet, so next up, Sonya finds a horribly disfigured Jax in what I assume to be the medbay, and suddenly she remembers to care about him. Where was all this emotion before you took a plane to a desert to find a temple that you and Jax have spent the past 7 years investigating together? What did you expect after Cole said that Jax stayed behind to fight, that he would make his own way here? This is Sonya and Jax's first scene together and it is broken. Don't you think Sonya would want Jax's help if they're traveling to a place that they've been researching for nearly a decade? Wouldn't she at least want to let him know that they're gone for a while? It's almost as though she's acting in the interest of expediting the plot and not remaining true to her character, which was established minutes prior. What would she have done if Liu Kang didn't magically locate Jax after Bi-Han was done with him? You know, they really did Jax dirty here because not only is he a bumbling idiot, none of the characters care about him besides insofar as the dragon mark, which makes him important by default. The last stop on the tour is Raiden's office, where he comes off as a crotchety geriatric unfit to lead a team to victory, but he's kind of vital for transport and shelter, so, for the purpose of this movie, he amounts to our champion's den mother. I'm starting to sense a pattern here. Before our gang is given any time to settle in, and before we've had time to process how this narrative mudslide could plausibly pan out, Bihan shows up and our characters start throwing lumps of CGI at each other. Why did Kung Lao's razor sharp hat not cut Bihan right there? How did it disappear on impact and then reappear on the floor for him to do that? Where is the temple's security? How was a villain allowed to get so far in without raising alarms? On Bihan's tail, Shang Tsung and a chick cosplaying as Melina enter to explain that they don't care about playing by the rules. But before the action can really get started, because come on, who would want that, Raiden puts up a force field around a segment of the temple. Oh boy, I hope that doesn't come back to bite him.
Cabal.
This interaction serves to make the movie's central conflict painfully obvious. Here are all the important players facing off against each other in one room, separated only by the might of a character who is forbidden from participating in Mortal Kombat. We're 50 minutes into this tornado of tripe, and the movie doesn't think we're capable of understanding character dynamics without a scene this overt. But I'll stop my tirade before I give off the impression that it gets any better after this.
The great hunter, Netara. She is beautiful.
Your training has begun. Come.
What? Only now the training has begun? Before Bihan appeared, you were meditating and the others were nowhere to be seen. What were they doing? Settling in? They handled a day-long 30k desert hike like it was nothing. Why would they take a load off once they got where they were going? Our actual final stop on the temple tour is the Fight Pit, where Mr. Kang explains the concept of Arcana, a hidden power that each champion has and must master if they are to stand a chance against the forces of Outworld. Skipping over that for now, Sonya is not permitted to train in the Fight Pit with the others because she does not have a mark, and therefore is not one of Earthrealm's champions in the tournament. This makes sense, as long as you don't think about it. You see, the opposition have made it very clear that they don't care about the rules of engagement and will pursue combat outside of tournament jurisdiction wherever they see the opportunity. Sonya might not be a tournament participant, but she is very much on your team and potentially a more skilled fighter than Cole and Kano combined. I'm not tooting her horn, I'm just pointing out how utterly bungled the power dynamics are. If the Outworlders come knocking again, Sonya will fight on behalf of Earthrealm, meaning that she'll probably get numerous opportunities to fight and kill one of Outworld's champions, meaning that their mark would transfer to her and she'll become an official contestant. The odds of it happening are, realistically speaking, high, so why hinder your team's success for the sake of rules that you aren't breaking? Why handicap your team when simply having Sonya train alongside the rest of the champions could only be a good thing? Lu's rationale is that a fighter without their Arcana is only a detriment to the mission, but Cole and Kano don't have theirs either. Literally, what is the difference between these three characters' abilities to help? None of them have powers. Each of them end up manifesting their Arcanas in drastically different ways, and from the get-go, it is unclear whether or not they are even capable of using them. Maybe they needed some reason, any nonsensical reason, to have her present when Jax woke up. Because we really needed a forced character building session where Jax doesn't take kindly to his prosthetic arms, leading Sonya to remind him of the history they share. In the following scene, Kano, in all his wisdom, brings up a fair point.
Oh, fucking hell. Is he on our side? Oh, those are great, mate. They make those in men's sizes?
Jax cannot be expected to perform with those arms. However, that's not really a problem because he has a mark and his Arcana is bound to manifest itself sometime soon. My issue has less to do with the value of the arms than it has to do with the temple's scientific capabilities. As in, how did they give Jax these arms? The construction, the circuitry, the surgery, how did they manage all the intricacies of applying prosthetic arms to a severely injured man within a matter of hours? When Sonya arrived, Jax was still rocking stumps. They got a tour of the temple, were attacked by Shang's goons, and after she was told she's not allowed to play with the boys, Jax's new arms were up and running. This cave looks to have the technological sophistication of Al-Qaeda HQ, and you expect me to believe this is within the realm of reason for a faction of warriors that operates exclusively on magic the rest of the time? What in this dusty hole could have allowed for the construction and application of these arms? Was it this thing? This leftover prop from the 90s Power Rangers set? Anyway, we finally reached the good part. And by that I mean the only good part. There are those who would consider the dinner scene the best scene in the movie, and while I wouldn't disagree with them, what passes for Mortal Kombat's best scene is par for the course in stories where writers give a shit about their characters. After Kano begins viciously berating his teammates, Kung Lao and Liu Kang begin to antagonize him in return. This is all in an effort to help Kano manifest his Arcana, which he doesn't know. So, he's in character, the monks are in character, the situation is an excellent blend of serious and lighthearted, and Kano's Arcana revealing itself is tangible character development, all of which amounts to a bog-standard group scene in something like The Avengers. And before you call me disingenuous or uncharitable, just remember that this could have been the whole movie. Every character could have been as well fleshed out as Kano and having as much fun as Kano. That is, if the writers cared to give the rest of the cast anything to work with. The next day, Cole is salty because Kano got his powers before him and throws in the towel, which is not an uncommon plot beat in Chosen One action stories, but typically the main character who quits halfway through before making a triumphant return is likable. I could not have been the only one cheering for Cole to leave at this point. Raiden, on the other hand, saw this guy holding his own against the Shaolin, but because he couldn't get his Arcana working in record time, he sends Cole home as though he's just been voted out of the temple. This is pretty twisted when you consider the fact that Bihan is still hunting the champions, and Raiden put up a force field to protect them while they train. A force field that does not extend to the not-so-safe safe house. Raiden is sending a powerless, washed-up MMA fighter into peril, and Sonya doesn't bat an eye. She wasn't concerned when Jax was dying on a dingy warehouse floor, and she doesn't care now that Cole is forfeiting Earthrealm's survival and his family's safety. There's that pattern again. But Lumo, I hear you object, oh so emphatically. Raiden knew that Cole's Arcana wouldn't manifest in these conditions, and knew that him being attacked by an Outworld champion, or rather, Outworld's champion, would be just the thing he needed. Now, besides the fact that that is never explained in the movie, and puts Cole's family in terrible danger, it is a pretty good plan. Over in Outworld, Shang Tsung has been taking listless strolls and having lethargic conversations with characters he always feels the need to introduce on the spot. Obviously, these characters know one another's names, and the MK fans do as well, so if you're going to introduce them as they appear, why not do so in every scene, instead of addressing the characters who are present in one scene and then neglecting them when new characters appear alongside them.
I am Sub-Zero.
We didn't win 9 straight tournaments by following the rules. Melina, let's finish this.
My loyal warriors,
Kabal, General Reiko.
If they're so eager to introduce themselves and each other, then why do they only do it for their initial introductions and not subsequent ones when they meet new characters? Well, because they're really introducing themselves to you. All this ceremony is purely for you, the stupid viewer with the memory of a fruit fly and attention span of a coked up chimp. I don't mind when movies indirectly treat me like a child, or, for thematic purposes, but this is just insulting. Remember that thing I said about Raiden's force field only covering part of the temple? Well, here it is, back to bite him in the ass. If the force field extended beyond the territory that those inside are likely to walk simply as a product of staying there, then this interaction could not have taken place. If Raiden had put the force field up around the perimeter of the temple, instead of cutting through its interior, no one would have been able to get close enough to bribe or in some other fashion manipulate the characters inside, and Kung Lao would still be alive. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Kano accepts Cabal's offer and, in a perfectly consistent character moment, betrays Earthrealm, shutting down the temple's force field and allowing Outworld's champions direct access. So not only is the magical shield too small to guard against the Silver Tongue, the generator for it is completely unguarded, despite the force field being the last line of defense for Earthrealm's champions. It's not, actually, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Meanwhile, at the not-so-safe safe house, Cole gets attacked by a 4-armed Ninja Turtle in a situation that could have been avoided if Raiden weren't a careless prick, but enough about his shortcomings. For now. Don't you find it odd how we don't see any interaction between Cole and his family from the time he's teleported away to the time Goro arrives? All that time in which they could have been discussing the amazing thing Cole has experienced, developing his relationship with Emily and Helen, exploring how he doesn't feel up to the challenge of protecting Earthrealm, or giving us some semblance of characterization for this movie's lead at all. Never mind that, because...
Now I tear out your spine, champion.
Firstly, Cole should not have survived this long. Full stop. Look at how much of a beating he takes in the cage match at the beginning of the movie, and compare his opponent there to his opponent here. I know the plot stopped caring about making sense long ago, but do they have to keep kicking our immersion while it's down? Secondly, what does this remind you of? If your answer was every instance of an OP boss-like enemy throwing the protagonist around like a ragdoll when they could have easily just ripped them apart, then you're spot on. I actually covered this in a very different context last year, but imagine my shock when the Mortal Kombat movie would not only commit this sin, but clearly depict the OP boss-like enemy involved tearing someone in two. There's a fucking mural of this, as though Goro has a reputation for doing it, which makes perfect sense by the way, but Cole's plot armor is just too strong for the folks behind the scenes to follow through on foreshadowing they set up in the same movie. And we're still not done. Cole's Arcana manifests after taking the beating of several lifetimes, which gives him access to literal plot armor and tonfas. I'm not even sure why the armor is necessary considering that he's still on his feet after all that punishment, but besides that, how does he even know how to use tonfas? Cole is a middle-of-the-road MMA fighter. Where did he learn to fight with unconventional Southeast Asian weaponry? As if this scene wasn't bad enough already, one more issue must be addressed.
Pain is the ultimate catalyst.
Really, Mr. Kang? Pain? Because Kano's Arcana manifested through rage. Shortly, we'll see Jax's come about owed to distress, and later on, Sonya gets hers off-screen while neither enraged, distressed, or in pain. Cole's power seems to have been brought on by some combination of pain and distress, but if you could make it work with no stimulus, mere moments after gaining a dragon mark, then what is the point of having Kano punt the ever-loving shit out of Cole in this scene? When Mr. Kang was stitching up Cole barely 20 minutes ago, he shared a memory from his early days working under Raiden, recounting a mission he was given to kill a human trafficker, and upon confronting him, noticed that he had a dragon mark, chose to take it from him,
And in that moment, my Arcana came forth.
What the hell is that supposed to mean? Did you get your powers before or after killing the guy? Logically, the answer would be after, but what use would you have for fireballs once the target was already dead? How poetic is it that these characters are equally as inept at storytelling as the writers are? Things just keep on happening and characters keep saying things, but there's no cause and effect or reliable relationship between them. Whatever you see is there purely to make you clap in a desperate attempt from the filmmakers to have you not totally regret sitting through this visual diarrhea. With the force field lowered at Raiden's temple, Outworld and Earthrealm's champions face off in the cinematic equivalent of smashing all your action figures together, imagining brutal deaths for some, heroic moments for others, and tragic defeats for at least one of the good guys. The only thing worth commenting on here is that by this point in the movie, Reptile, Goro, and Natara have died with barely 5 minutes of screen time across the three of them. While I'm sure we can all agree that Natara is the lesser vampire simp queen of 2021, Goro and Reptile are undeniable staples of this IP, and they're gone just as soon as they arrived. I have a sneaking suspicion that Kung Lao will get brought back as a revenant in the sequel, so these two could get the same treatment, but my issue concerns the filmmakers' faith in this movie to launch a franchise of Mortal Kombats. It doesn't look like they had all that much confidence in this project considering how much superficial fan service they throw at you with a guarantee of diminishing returns. Some keys can only be jangled once. Now he shows up. What took Raiden so long to arrive to this battle? What was Raiden doing outside of Raiden's temple? Maybe he was killing time in the Void. What's the Void? I hear you probe oh so curiously.
It is the realm between your world and mine. Shang Tsung cannot follow us here.
This is why some people should never be let anywhere near a pen and paper. These writers clearly have no idea what they've done by contriving a realm between realms in which our heroes are safe from the villain who has interdimensional tracking powers. Raiden, why not have the champions train here? To go on a slight tangent, Liu Kang said that they wouldn't see another full moon before the tournament begins. I truly don't know what that means to this crack team of gifted storysmiths, but according to my limited understanding of the phases of the moon, that means they have less than a month before this movie's namesake takes place. In fact, the last full moon could have been 3 weeks ago already, meaning that the tournament is only a matter of days away. But of course, we know they crafted this line in such a way that would allow them to weasel out of any precise time constraints. Every other word out of Liu Kang's mouth is how they're short on time to train, but he doesn't need to keep reminding us of a deadline that is never made clear. What is the point of having him repeatedly attest to how urgent their situation is if you're not going to put a definitive time constraint on their training? But back to the point at hand. They're short on prep time, so why would Raiden, as old and wise as he is, see that Shang Tsung has found his champion's training grounds and not immediately relocate to the Void? Do you mean to tell me that there is some unassailable difference between training on sand and training on whatever the Void's floor is made out of? Fuck right off, it's the same. The writers casually introduced a solution to a litany of in-universe problems and didn't use it until after a main character died. Raiden's incompetence cost Kung Lao his soul. Those things aren't easy to replace. If he had showed up moments earlier, Kung Lao would still be alive, and if he had the sense to train everyone in the Void in the first place, they might still have had Kano on their side. Not that he's exactly a pleasure to work with, I'm just appealing to strength in numbers. After spending no more than 2 minutes in the Void, everyone jumps back into action, because Raiden has the power to teleport even Outworld's champions wherever he pleases. And so begins the third act. Now please excuse me while I skip over all of this inane bullshit because I really couldn't be bothered to make this script any longer than it has to be. After Earthrealm's champions kill Reiko, Kano, Cabal, and Melina, Bi-Han shows up to taunt Cole with one of Emily's bracelets. Now, we know how and why all these fights took place, separate from each other. Because Raiden can teleport anyone anywhere, and because Cole had the bright idea to fight the Outworlders on their terms for a change. Fine, but how did Bihan know what sentimental value that bracelet would have to Cole? And why did Bihan wait till after his cohorts were dead to make a move? Raiden isn't the only one capable of teleporting characters around. It was moronic of Bihan not to intervene earlier. But, now that he has made his move and successfully lured Cole to a place where they can fight unimpeded by the other champions, why doesn't Raiden just teleport all of them to the gym as well? There is no rhyme or reason to how overpowered this dotard is. Sometimes, his abilities are what push the plot forward, and other times, significant plot beats are only allowed to happen because Raiden must be sitting on his hands somewhere off screen. Before this encounter has even begun, it's glaringly obvious how poorly set up it is. This is the climactic fight, built on quicksand and conducted like an orchestra of tone-deaf toddlers. More slamming of action figures under the misguided pretense that spectacle can substitute substance.
Get over here!
What?
How? Cole getting some of his blood on the kunai was all it took to resurrect Hanzo? Really? You know, in hindsight, the prophecy does imply that there's something special about Scorpion's blood, and depending on how you interpret that, maybe, just maybe, nah, I'm kidding, this movie fucking sucks. It's genuinely Cole's blood on the kunai that brings Hanzo back from the dead. I mean, aren't prophecies supposed to be deliberately vague? Because this one turned out to be very literal. And I almost forgot how nonsensical the Hasashi's survival even is. How did Raiden know to save the baby at that moment? Did he have foreknowledge of Bion's attack on the village? And how did he know exactly where to find the baby? Why did Bion even want to kill the Hasashis? Is the prophecy a thing at this point or not? If not, then we have no idea why Bihan launched this onslaught at all. If it is though, then why didn't Raiden take more care in protecting the Hasashi bloodline? It wouldn't have taken much effort for Bihan to find the baby too. Cole is only alive because Raiden got lucky. Anyway, while these two grown men engage in an over-budgeted fan film fight, Emily and Jennifer are frozen solid, and at the first chance Cole gets, he punches the ice around them. Spoiler alert, they survive. Fucking brilliant. They've done it again. Established one thing and depicted another in the same movie. A double dose of inter-narrative dissonance. At the rate that Bihan was able to freeze his arms, Jax was lucky to even survive meeting him. But these two are frozen head to toe, and smashing the ice around them inexplicably does no damage to them. Remember when it took special super juice to allow your body to endure that much cold? After Hanzo drops a fireball in the octagon, and with Bihan as good as defeated, Cole just picks the ladies up out of the ice. Their brains were popsicles for at least 20 minutes, and you know they won't suffer any long-term side effects for it.
Sit. I will warm you.
With the W secured, Hanzo announces that Cole freed him and politely asks that he protect the Hasashi bloodline. In Japanese. Too many questions, not enough motivation, moving on. Raiden and the other champions telepoop in at the perfect time to be of no use against Bihan, and Shang Tsung shows up to hurl some more threats that can't withstand these characters' plot armor. But before the nightmare can end, they just had to reduce Johnny Cage of all people to sequel bait in a story that might only have benefited from his replacing Cole. I would be thankful that there's no post-credit scene, but this conclusion serves the same purpose. In fact, it would be more fitting to state that this movie has no conclusion, effectively ending as abruptly as a Hitchcock film, with none of the charm or compelling developments. I can't wait to see what the rest of YouTube has to say about this. No, Mortal Kombat is not good, it's not even serviceable. The people who think that it's anything other than dogshit are the very reason mainstream movies and games keep stooping to substandard storytelling. Warner Bros. Didn't have one single movie to establish all these characters. They've already baited a sequel, so we know more are on the way. They could have taken as much time as they wanted. They were patient enough not to have the tournament in their first feature, but simply couldn't wait for a logical explanation for Jax's arms, or more ceremonious deaths for iconic characters. Because it's not about telling a Mortal Kombat story, it's about milking fans of their money and praise with shameless key jangling. Reviews like these are why studios keep pumping out trash like this. There's a video out there of the actors reacting to their characters in action in MK11, and they look surprised at what they're seeing. Did they not do the most basic research for their roles? Some reviews go as far as to say that Mortal Kombat respects the legacy of the lore and characters, at which point I wondered if we even watched the same movie. Mortal Kombat uses and abuses beloved characters like you would a $5 hooker. The main cast is extremely generic, barring Kano, he's solid. The villains are what I believe the gaming community refers to as jobbers, characters that serve as cannon fodder to make the protagonists look cool and move the plot along. Some of the most major characters in the lore, those with the most potential for character development and action set pieces, are reduced to MacGuffins to make way for a cardboard cutout of a hero and a supporting cast of lobotomized mouthpieces.
flawless victory.
How respectful. Raiden and Shang Tsung are absent of the authoritative auras everyone obligatorily treats them with. Sonya is stripped of any character agency and handed her arcana on a silver platter. Scorpion sits out the whole movie until the plot realizes he's what the viewers want to see. And Cole Young is in the movie, unnecessarily and wasting runtime while we all know Johnny Cage would have fit the role better. And listen, Melina being the corrupt, mutated, vile, repulsive bad copy clone of Katana is one thing, but making her black as well is a step too far, guys. It's 2021. We're better than this. The very rules by which the tournament of Mortal Kombat operates are broken so that this plot can play out, proof that this movie is just a stepping stone to something else, which has not been earned. Fans don't watch Mortal Kombat for the quality writing, grounded action, or high-concept intriguing story. They watch it for nostalgia. People who will defend any piece of crap with the Mortal Kombat label do so out of attachment to a brand that stopped caring about them years ago. It's about money, which is why this IP is milked for all it's worth with no consideration of logical integrity or creativity. Whatever puts money in the pockets of the Warner Bros. Execs, right? So many people defend the terrible execution with, "It's exactly what I expected, so I can't be mad." Or, of the same energy, "It's Mortal Kombat, what did you expect?" I love how, depending on the position of the sun at the time of having the discussion, people will flip-flop on whether you're supposed to expect a movie to stink or go in without expectations and allow it to surprise you. It really depends on how they feel in the moment. The type of people to defend trash like this are the type with no consistent framework for evaluating anything. It made them feel a way, so they die on its hill despite the folks behind the scenes looking intently on at them with $ eyes. It is far too popular to give this shit a 6 to 7 out of 10 and call it good. Obviously, logical integrity doesn't mean a thing to people anymore, and by the same token, it's no wonder so many reviews focus on the history and adaptation of the IP. It's because there's no substance to the movie itself. I hate to bring ad hominem into this, but some of these reviews are so painfully vapid that I can't help but think that the reviewers are just as shallow as their praise of the movie. It amazes me how some people can criticize Mortal Kombat for leaving certain elements for a sequel, arguing that they may not even be able to do a sequel, and simultaneously praise the Johnny Cage tease at the end. How can someone suffering from that much cognitive dissonance be a real human being?
But I like them, like, you know, the ref was like, that jerky ref was like, "Oh, where are you heading off to?" And Cole Young goes, "Hollywood." And I'm like, "Oh, he's going to get Johnny Cage."
C-3PO and R2-D2 showed up, and I clapped.
I clapped when I saw Darth Vader.
Did you clap at any of the new moments and memorable characters?
Were there any?
No!
The lack of care shown for such a rich fiction, combined with the sequel bait, just proves that this isn't a movie, it's the trailer for a franchise, a promo to get more butts in seats over the course of years, sucking another beloved IP into the void of corporate gluttony that is beginning to target too many of the things I used to like. First Arrow, then the MCU, now this. I won't stand for it. Mortal Kombat was made on a budget of $55 million. For comparison, so was Joker, which supports an argument I will not give up on pushing. When the budget is not there to do a Transformers, or Fast 5, or Mission Impossible 4, or Avengers-level film, which is the type of deal we're talking here, then cut out the over-the-top CGI nonsense that bolsters those film scripts and just focus on the script. Look at what Logan did with over twice the budget. Its action is all in service of the show-stealing performances and gripping narrative. But don't get me wrong, Mortal Kombat is not a failure because of the budget. The onus remains squarely on the heads of the people in charge of the screenplay, which I have no doubt in my mind included the studio execs because skulls are verboten in China and Hanzo totally half-assed his fatality on Bihan. Look, I'm not asking for Mortal Kombat to be a cinematic masterpiece, just consistent and mindful with the bountiful material it has to work with. Not perfect, just showing some effort at least. Not great, just decent. How do I know that Mortal Kombat as an IP is even capable of reaching such storytelling heights? Because it already has. Skip this section of the video if you have not seen Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge, because I will be covering spoilers in the interest of fawning over it. Literally, the first scene in Legends establishes that the Scorpion has symbolic value to the Shirai Ryu, justifying Hanzo's adoption of the name later on. Mortal Kombat didn't even bother explaining why he identified as Scorpion. The climactic fight was brought to a screeching halt so that he could announce his new name out of the blue. Here, however, when Hanzo takes the title of Scorpion, it's earned. It was set up, worked hard for, although off-screen, and paid off. Efficiently so. We actually see Scorpion suffering in the Netherrealm instead of him alluding to it, with a few brief scraps of video to back up the claim. In Legends, the supporting cast has so much more agency and is not just a collection of side characters for Cole's story. Characters' first scenes establish their motivations and most important character traits, or, at the very least, accurately portray them. Johnny Cage is obnoxious and conceited, Liu Kang is dutiful and starry-eyed, Sonya is driven and confident, Jax is mature and authoritative, Scorpion is vengeful and tortured, Quan Chi is sadistic and conniving, Raiden is wise, mysterious, and seriously intimidating. When Raiden exposits about Sonya and Johnny to Liu Kang, it's justified because Liu Kang doubts their chances in the tournament and Raiden was just setting the record straight. He finds Johnny genuinely amusing, meaning that more depth is given to Raiden in this scene than in all of this movie. He isn't just a grumpy old fast travel dummy in Legends, he's an active character. Raiden directly advises those around him instead of just being a background character in a story where he is the one assembling Earthrealm's team. In Legends, most of the characters are fleshed out, and Kano is one of the few flat ones, whereas in Mortal Kombat, Kano is not the best character, he's the only character. He has dimension and a vulgar kind of charisma to him, but don't let that lead you to believe that his eccentric hyper-douchebaggery is anything above standard for characters in well-crafted team-up movies. Legends embraces a concept that the folks behind Mortal Kombat might as well have never heard of. Show, don't tell. Sonya is introduced by her dog tags, Hanzo by a scorpion, Liu Kang meditating in a dojo, and Johnny Cage by a scorned lover lambasting him for being immature and narcissistic. Legends does not waste time establishing character motivations. It does not waste time showing what they are all physically capable of. It does not waste time building the world and the lore and the characters' goals therein. Legends does not waste time. Sonya is still in the process of tracking Kano, not playing buddy-buddy with him while acknowledging how sick and depraved he is. She's an actual hardass, not a wet blanket poser who you can tell has no experience being assertive. She fucking shatters Johnny's nuts for touching her. She goes back for more later just because he won't shut up. Shang Tsung is grandiose and working for Shao Kahn. His introduction doubles as a lore dump and a speech to the audience of the tournament, all done neat and tidy. Mortal Kombat might have had the patience not to feature the tournament in its first franchise outing, but Legends had the patience not to contrive a way for Jax to get cybernetic arms while there was no logical route to them. Actually, now that I think about it, both these movies did have a tournament play out within their plots, but only one of them was respectful to the source material.
Besides, the other gods are too lazy to stop me.
Legends even included X-ray shots, not just characters parroting lines from the games in a cringy way, visceral, shocking, brutal imagery that speaks for itself. Mortal Kombat has an R rating. Why pussy out on making the most of it? Are there no different tiers of the R rating that distinguish between brutality and gore and movies in which characters drop more than one F-bomb? We see Hanzo's kid die. Mortal Kombat thinks it has teeth. It doesn't. Legends has teeth. Mortal Kombat showcases just enough to appease the lackadaisical fans who want nothing more than superficial references to the games and lore. As deep as a puddle and as coherent as a YouTuber apology video. If they wanted to make Cole a compelling character, they should have just allowed his family to die while frozen. That would have made more sense in-universe and would have made for compelling symmetry between him and Scorpion, as though the Hasashi's true legacy is that of tragedy. But no. The live-action Mortal Kombat film with some serious talent behind it which so many fans have been eagerly anticipating is not ready to have that conversation. You think the audience needs an uninformed character to sponge up all the exposition and lore so they don't feel out of the loop? Johnny served that purpose in Legends. Hell, Kano could have been the inquisitive idiot in this plot. Josh Lawson clearly has the potential for it. And for those of you who are unaware, Kano in the games is on a crusade to get in Sonya's pants, consent or not. This movie took enough liberties with all of the characters that having Kano be the POV character wouldn't have been a bad idea. We're long past the time when we need our protagonists to be noble, pure-of-heart heroes. Hollywood only thinks we're too stupid to know right from wrong, so characters with enough potential to put on morally grey performances are dumbed down to fit into the good versus evil paradigm, to the dismay of anyone who's seen Despicable Me. Please, people, stop using the word good to describe everything between Mortal Kombat and Silence of the Lambs. It's not strong enough to endure having its definition stretched that far. I know budgetary restrictions play a role in all of this, and that the live-action adaptation simply could not have lived up to the standard of creativity and scale that the animated one could, but bigger is not necessarily better. The live-action film isn't about the actual tournament, so they didn't even need to bring in Goro or Cabal or so much of the shallow fan service that they had. If they had spent more time fleshing out the characters they had to work with, instead of contriving ways to jangle keys in front of your face, then maybe I wouldn't have made this video. It was gut-wrenching to hear every other review mention the 90s films and even the Machinima adaptation, but not Legends. Why? Because animated movies don't count? What the fuck does that mean? Does it have a script? Does it have characters? Is there a sequence of events? Is it capable of bringing you to tears or teaching you something profound you might not have otherwise learned? Do you watch it on a screen? Then it fucking counts.
Get over here! Get over here!
I had fun with Legends the first time round, but after this pathetic excuse of an adaptation, Legends looks like artistic brilliance in comparison. It is more stylish, more indulgent, more satisfying. The art style is sharp and lends itself wonderfully to the action. The running joke that Johnny thinks they're on a movie set is actually funny. The writing for Legends ranges from basic to compelling. The writing for Mortal Kombat ranges from pathetic to painful. The sequel bait in Legends, if you can call it that, is not tacked on and disconnected, but a completely logical continuation of the story that just unfolded. Every character interaction, no matter how slight, is perfectly aligned with what we know about them and their motivations, rather than watching NPCs with iconic names recite lines they clearly have no stake in delivering. Legends is proof that there is beauty in simplicity. It functions at a foundational level and offers well-integrated, highly indulgent fan service to bolster its narrative. It's no masterpiece, probably sits at a 6 or 7 out of 10, but most of it makes sense. That alone should not be cause for celebration, considering what we hold in the highest esteem nowadays, but damn it, it's welcomed proof that we don't need to settle for this. As critics, we should call out Mortal Kombat for the artistic dumpster fire it is. As fans, we should call it out for the shameless and cynical pandering that it uses in place of a story. But as consumers, of course we should praise and adore it. Look at all the cool stuff, the moves from the games, the lines from the games. Gore. Wow. Mortal Kombat is a series of moving images and noises in which wannabe iconic characters show up wearing outfits reminiscent of their wardrobe from the games and say things their game counterparts or the announcer would say, which, combined with lackluster costume design and a logically compromised script, makes for an entertaining experience on the surface and 9 layers of disappointment beneath that. This movie has no chance of standing on its own. Without prior knowledge of the games, it is just nonsense. Characters blurt out robotic one-liners and allude to lore that no non-fan would understand or care about, with little besides wasted potential to maintain their investment throughout. Cole Young is a blank slate whose intrigue is facilitated by having a family, who we barely see him interact with, and being related to Scorpion, who he wouldn't be able to tell apart from an outworld assassin if the plot didn't shoehorn in visions of him burning in the Netherrealm. He simply didn't need to be here. Do filmmakers really think so little of the audience that we won't be able to empathize and identify with characters who have decades of established history behind them? That we need a clumsy human to be our surrogate in this world? Even then, why not make a Johnny? Or even Kano? So much screen time is wasted on this personification of vanilla. The action is admirable, and at times creative, but is absent of weight or stakes. After Jax is crippled and left for dead, he's medevaced to where he needs to be off-screen, and the same method by which his arms were crushed is how Cole attempts to free his family from their would-be coffins. Kano forgets that he has festering wounds on his face and leg as soon as the scene changes, despite them causing him severe pain in the moment. Cole is beat to a pulp by a powerless MMA fighter and needs direct medical attention for a cut from Kung Lao's hat, but survives several minutes of pounding from Outworld's champion and a building collapsing on him. Less than a minute into the first fight scene, the action isn't too shabby, but it simply lacks impact. The deaths of important characters are missing a sense of visual or plot-based gravity, barring a single standout fatality, which was performed on a villain as memorable as the last sheet of toilet paper you used. Swords pass through muscle and bone like nothing. Stuntmen are covered everywhere except their eyes, meaning they essentially had unlimited cannon fodder enemies and settled for this. At the tail end of their fight, Bi-Han stabs Hanzo with a blunt garden instrument, which, while not immediate, is the killing blow. Cabin in the Woods saw Chris Hemsworth survive a stab wound with a sharp garden instrument in the same spot, and that wasn't a Mortal Kombat movie. What is going on? Can these characters survive near lethal amounts of damage or not? And what qualifies each character to endure the physical trauma they do? There is no through line to any of this, no consistency to how or why, making for action spectacle that implicitly treats its viewers no different to an illiterate toddler reading a book for the pictures alone. And oh, what visuals we get to revel in. Special effects that are admittedly far better than the narrative that underpins them, alternate dimensions entirely comprised of 2 shades of dirt and a spicy catwalk with no building surrounding it, and costume design that any cosplayer worth their salt would be embarrassed by. Seriously, where did the budget go that Scorpion and Sub-Zero end up looking like this? If they had the budget to make these costumes, why not make them look like this? MK characters are known for their color-coded outfits and highly distinct styles, yet Bihan and Melina look like they went to the same tailor. In close-ups, it's distracting how oversized his jawpiece is, and in wide shots, he looks like a 10-year-old on Halloween. Liu Kang is in godlike shape for this role, and then you get Melina appearing pudgy and utterly unintimidating. Look at how tiny she is. And let's not forget that miserable remix of the Mortal Kombat theme that gets a solid minute of combined playtime. If all these design choices, in isolation or combination, do not constitute the definition of disrespectful to the lore which it is adapting, then what does? I've reached the end of my critique and all I have left are questions. Why did Scorpion's mark continue to get passed down through his family? Shouldn't it have transferred to Sub-Zero upon his death? Why did he get sent to the Netherrealm and nobody else did? How did Liu Kang find Jax? Was he actively looking for the gang when he bumped into them in the desert, or did he just expect them to be in the neighborhood? Why is Sonya not surprised to see Jax there after having abandoned him? And why isn't she sorry for abandoning him? How did Cole have access to a safe house? Why did Raiden only cover part of the interior of his temple with a force field? Why is every other character afforded epic fatalities in their fights, but Melina gets death by onion rings and Kano gets gnomed? Why did Bihan even attack Scorpion? Are their clans rivaling? Was he working for Shang Tsung back then as well? From the get-go, this movie is in tatters and devolves into decreasingly coherent crap by the minute. At this point, you may be wondering why I even made this video if all I had was negative criticism, which is bullshit by the way.
You fucking beauty.
Simply put, the analysis of art and the communication of one's findings is never in vain, because, as I hope Mortal Kombat will prove in the long run, we can all learn from a bad example. As always, I love discussion and debate, so if you have any criticism of my take on Mortal Kombat, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and lastly, I know that I kept getting Cole's wife's name wrong. I did it on purpose, because you sure shit didn't remember it. Sucking another beloved IP into the void of corporate... fucking hell.